everyone, and welcome back to my channel. This is Erica from Confessions of a Homeschooler, and since I've started quilting, I have gotten a ton of questions on how to get started and people asking for tutorials and things like that. So I thought I would go ahead and do a fun video series for you, and we're going to take it, kind of break it up into hopefully workable pieces for you so it's not too much information at one time. So today we're going to start out by covering just the essential supplies that you need for quilting. So really you don't need a whole lot of supplies. You basically kind of need the basics of a sewing machine, thread, fabric, some scissors. But I am going to just cover my favorite supplies and what we need for the most part to get started quilting. So let's take a look. Alright, so one of the first things that you're going to need when you first start quilting is a nice self-healing mat. And I have this one. I'll try and do a better picture of it for you, but this one is by American Crafts and it's double-sided, and you can buy them. I bought this one on Amazon and they ship flat, which is really nice because they aren't warped or rolled up or anything like that when you get them. You can also get them from your local hobby stores. I've had Fisker's mats before and a few other brands, and so I would just say go find one that you know, is within your budget and go for it. The nice one about the American Crafts is that it's really thick. It's probably twice as thick as the Fisker's ones I've used. However, I have had, I've used the other brands like I said before and been just fine with them. So just get whatever fits your budget. I would suggest getting one that is of somewhat decent size. This particular one is looks like 17 by 23 inches, and quite honestly I got this to replace my other one, which was, I think it was 18 by 24 maybe. And that one was actually nice because a fat quarter is 18 by 22, so it was easy to trim a fat quarter on it. This one is just an inch shy of trimming a fat quarter, so I have to fold them in half. So it's not a big deal. I love this mat, but it's just something to consider. So you want to get one that's a big enough, you know, for your workspace that you can work on, or if you're buying yardage, those are about, you know, folded in half, it's 22 inches long, and so you need something that you can kind of cut at least that length on. So that's just something to keep in mind. The other thing that you'll need is a rotary trimmer, and I like this one. This is my favorite one. I've tried lots of different ones. This one is by Olfa, and I'll try and link all of this stuff below, and I also have a blog post with all of these listed as well. But this is just a 45 millimeter rotary blade, and it just snaps open and closed when you're going to use it, so for safety. And I have found that this gives really good cuts. It's nice and sturdy. I don't feel like the blade wobbles or anything, so you're going to want one of those. Again, there's other brands out there. The other thing that you're going to want are some scissors, and these are just some craft scissors I bought from a local craft store, but they're nice and sharp, and you're going to want to just put those to the side so that people aren't using them on paper or, you know, other things. You want to kind of keep your fabric scissors just for your fabric, because then it keeps them nice and sharp, and if you use them on other things they get dull. I also have a smaller little set of embroidery scissors, and these are great for if you're just clipping threads off of the top of your quilt or something. You don't really want to be using your big scissors because it's too easy to accidentally snip into your fabric, and you really don't want to do that. You want something where you have a little bit more control and you can just kind of snip off threads. I also have these, which work really well, and these are actually spring-bound clippers, and I don't know exactly what they're called, but I'll try and link them for you. But these are also really good because they're really sharp, and you can, and they're really pointy, and you can just kind of clip your fabric that way. The other thing that you'll need are some rulers, and I like to use these clear rulers. These ones are from Creative Grids, and this isn't a sponsored video or anything. These are just my favorite ones because I feel like the lines, and I'll do a close-up for you for these, but you can really see really well the lines. The lines are nice and skinny, so you're not trying to figure out if you should be measuring on the outside or the inside of the line. I've had rulers that have fatter lines, and so you're getting less consistent cuts. So these ones are really nice because I feel like they're really easy to read, and they also have these little grip things on the back so they don't slide around on your fabric and slide on you when you're trying to rotary cut. And I will do a video on how to properly cut your fabric in a separate video. But my favorite sizes for these, like if I was going to go and just buy one, I would probably get a smaller one, kind of like this. This one is 6 inches by 12.5, just because it's a little bit easier to handle if you're dealing with small pieces of fabric. You could also even go, this one is just a 6 by 6 square. They do have other more common sizes like a 7.5 inch, 8.5 inch. Like you can kind of get these in almost any size. I just like to have a smaller one for when I'm dealing with smaller pieces. It's a lot easier than wielding around some big ruler. That said, if I were to just get one ruler, I would probably go for this one, which is 24.5 by looks like 6.5. And this one is nice and long, and the reason that I suggest this one is because you can cut yardage with this. It is long enough to cut all the way up a piece of yardage, and then you can kind of, turn it around and cut smaller pieces off it as well. But at least you can cut a whole sheet of yardage with this without having to slide up and down a smaller roll. So if you're only going to get one, I would start off with this one, and then potentially later down the road you can buy, some other sizes. This was probably the last one I bought. This one is a 15.5 by 15.5. I love this ruler, mainly because it's big enough to square up most of the size blocks that I create. Some of them are larger, but still, this gives you a nice, good square to work with, and it makes it really easy to square up your blocks when you're finished. So this is kind of a nice have. The one I would for sure get is the 6.5 by 24.5, and then I would also probably splurge on some kind of a smaller one just to deal with smaller fabrics. So that's it for rulers. The next thing that you're going to need is some thread, and as you can see, I have a nice kind of variety of colors here. Really, right off the bat, I would just suggest that you go and get a spool of white. White is going to kind of match everything unless you're doing a really dark quilt, like say whatever background your quilt is going to be. If you're going to do a black or navy or whatever color you're kind of working with on your fabric, that's probably the best one to get. I tend to do a lot of white, and white sort of goes with everything. Even if I'm quilting on top of stuff, it's kind of nice to see white. So I have a lot of white thread, and then some of these other ones I've gotten as I've just kind of grown my collection, and I mostly get the smaller ones, mainly because I use those to attach my binding, because a lot of times when I'm putting on binding, I don't want the thread to show, and so I just get whatever color kind of goes with my binding. That way it's kind of hidden. But I do all of my piecing and quilting with a white. And this white is my favorite one. It's by Aurifil, and it's number 2021. And it's kind of a soft white. It's not super, super white. I do have another one which is 2024, and this is really, really white. This one is just a little bit more subtle. It's not like off-white, but it's just kind of more of a softer white. So I like this one because it stands out a little bit less, and it also seems to match pretty much everything, and you aren't like seeing your thread. So if you like to do quilting where you can see the thread, and the thread is really kind of a centerpiece of your quilting, then I would say go and get some fun colors. But just when you're starting out, I would just get whatever basic color you're kind of working with mostly in your fabric selection, and just stick with that. My daughters even have found, they got a bunch of thread for Christmas to go with their sewing machines, and they had all different colors, and they really ended up going out and buying one of those huge spools of white. They just got it from, I think, Walmart or wherever, and they just use that now because the thread doesn't, when you're piecing, it's hidden behind it. You don't really see it. The only thread you're really going to see is when you're quilting on top of your project at the end. So that's my advice on thread. One last note about the thread is that when you're quilting, most likely you will be using cotton quilting materials, and so you're going to want to get a nice 100% cotton thread to go along with those. The main reason is that you are going to be washing these together, and cotton shrinks, and so if you have cotton batting and cotton fabric, you're also going to want cotton thread so that your shrinkage is similar, and also it's nice and strong. I really don't use polyester thread in my quilting unless for some reason I am using a polyester material, which I don't normally do. I really prefer the cotton, but you're going to kind of want to match your thread with your fabric, and just to make sure that you have the same amount of shrinkage, and also that you have good quality thread, because I have seen before people who have used really inexpensive thread, and unfortunately when they put their quilts in the wash, the threads can break apart, and your masterpiece can kind of get ruined. And so you don't want to do that. You do want to spend a little bit more on your thread and get a good quality thread. All right. The next thing that I have are pins, and I don't use these as much anymore, but pins are very important because when you're piecing a block together, it's really helpful for you to pin the seams so that you have your corners lining up and that kind of thing, and it can just keep it from shifting all over the place while you're trying to piece your block. So I would get a little set of pins. These are the Little House pins, and they're super sharp. They're tiny, and so they don't make holes in the fabric, so I really like these, and I will try and link these for you below. And then just as a side note, this super cute magnetic pin bowl is from a friend of mine on Instagram, and I will link her shop as well. She makes these for sale, and they're great because they're magnetic, and if you drop your pins, you can just run this on the floor and pick them up, and also, as you're kind of throwing things around the table, you don't have pins like going everywhere, so I really like these. The next thing that you'll for sure need is a seam ripper. Not very exciting, but I don't know anyone yet who has done any kind of sewing and never ever messed up once. So this is the most inexpensive seam ripper I could find, and honestly I like it, probably one of the best ones that I like. It's just easy for my hand to grip. So just go find a fun seam ripper, and it doesn't really matter which kind, but you'll be needing one. All right, the next thing, and these are really kind of a nice to have, are these little wonder clips, and these are great if you're doing some kind of thicker work, like if you're doing a rag quilt where you're having like kind of, you know, thick batting and like maybe minky fabric or whatever, where pins aren't holding it as well. These are great. These are also, they're really kind of more used for binding clips, so you can kind of hold your binding on while you're stitching it around, but I use these for all kinds of things, so that's kind of a nice have. It's not like a requirement, you have to go run out and buy these or anything like that, but they are nice. The other thing that I have are these fun little alphabet tiles, and you could even make these. These ones are from Fat Quarter Shop, and they're called Alphabetties, and these are just, again, a nice to have. They aren't like a requirement, but a lot of the patterns nowadays have their pieces are labeled alphabetically, and so you can keep track of what pieces as you've cut them out and where they go, and then, you know, once you cut them all out, they'll say, all right, so piece A to piece B, and so these are just nice for labeling your pieces. You can also do it on sticky notes. I've done that before as well, but since I use these so much, I did go ahead and purchase a little bundle of them, and I believe they now come in, when I bought them, they only came in this kind of hot pink color. I believe they also come in like a blue color now, but these are just kind of fun. Again, you don't have to have these, but they are nice. All right, the next thing that you're going to want to grab is some machine gears if you plan on doing your own quilting, and we'll cover that in another video as well. But these are just gloves. You can get them. I've seen them at Joann's. I bought these online. These ones are called machine gears. They have some have different names, but really all they are gloves with kind of sticky like rubber on the ends of the fingers, and that helps your fingers hold the fabric and slide it around as you're quilting. And these are really helpful for putting on binding as well, because, you know, your fingers are smooth, and if you're pushing through a whole quilt, it's hard to kind of get a grip on that, and you don't want to be grabbing your quilt and pushing it, because A, it's not good on your arms and all that kind of thing, but also you're scrunching up your fabric and moving things around. So these are really nice and handy. They just give you a little bit of extra control over your fabric. So if you're going to be doing your own quilting, which I hope you are after this video series, I highly suggest you get a pair of these. They're only around like $8 or $9. So again, you don't have to have these, but highly recommended. Now we're going to talk briefly about fabric, and this is probably the favorite part of mine. So that's why when you're spending money on all these other supplies, I kind of just would say get the basics and then save your money for fabric, because that's the really fun part. So let's take a closer look at some of these pre-cuts. Of course, you can always buy fabric in yardage, but I like to work with pre-cuts when I'm quilting for a couple of reasons. One, it's a good way to get all of the fabrics in a certain line. You know they're already going to match up, so you're not having to you know, pick out colors and all that kind of thing. And for me, that can be really stressful, trying to figure out what colors I'm going to use. I can spend almost as much time trying to figure out what colors I'm going to use on a quilt as I can quilting it. So pre-cuts work really well for me. If you're the type of person who likes to mix and match things, then by all means head to your local fabric store and just, you know, find a pattern that you like and grab the fabrics that are listed for that pattern. Now when you first start buying, you're going to be tempted to get a lot of fabric. I would suggest that when you first start going for fabric, that you find a pattern you like and go and just get the requirements for that pattern. What's going to happen after that is that you're going to have some scraps left over, and you're going to be starting to build what's called your fabric stash. And you can put those in a little bin and save them for use on another project. And then I would, when you're done with that project, go get another pattern and again buy fabric for that. Once you start getting a feel for that and what you like and things that you use more, then you can maybe go out and start getting more of the pre-cut bundles and things like that. But that's just my advice on getting started and trying to get some fabric going. So let's talk about pre-cuts. The first one, these are mostly by Moda. This one is called a jelly roll, and this one is a 2.5 inch strip of width of fabric. So it's like usually width of fabric is usually between 42 and 44 inches. So they took an entire bolt of fabric and just cut a 2.5 inch strip of it, and then they put it in this nice little cute roll. There are specific quilts that are meant for jelly rolls, so you can buy a jelly roll, usually plus a coordinating background fabric, and make an entire quilt out of one of these. So this is kind of a fun way to get lots of colors in your quilt without going out and buying like a whole ton of fabric. The next one I should have started with this one. This is the smallest one. This is called a candy charm, I believe, or a mini charm. These are 2.5-inch squares, and my girls love these. These are great for kids because they don't have to do any cutting. They can simply take all of these little squares and sew them all together and have a nice little pillow or doll quilt or book cover. I have a tutorial for a book cover using these, and they're just really cute, and they're also a great way to sample a line. If you're not sure if you like a line of fabric, you can order one of these and just see before you go and order more fabric. So these are super cute. These run around $4 to $5 a piece, I believe. And the jelly rolls can be, it depends. Some stores have sales, so you're looking anywhere between $25 and maybe $35 for one of these. Maybe more depending on the line and the store. All right, the next size up is called a charm square. These are 5-inch squares, and these are also great. I use these for my kids a lot because, again, they don't have to cut. And these are bigger, so they can make like a patchwork kind of quilt with these, and they don't have to do any, you know, like, again, you get the whole line of fabric. You don't have to do any cutting or anything like that. So these are also a great alternative to buying yardage. The next size up is the layer cake. These are 10-inch squares, and again, you get one of each of the fabrics in the line, and these run anywhere, I think the charm packs, I'm sorry, are about $7 to $10 depending. These can run anywhere, they're about the same price as a jelly roll, so anywhere from like $25 to say $40 for these. One of the things you're going to want to keep an eye out for, and this kind of goes for all the pre-cuts, is that different manufacturers and different lines have a different amount. Most of Moda's lines, well, it kind of depends, but they have around 40 different pieces of fabric, or 40 different, you know, chunks in one bundle. So some of the other lines, a lot of the Riley Blake lines have more like 20 or so. So that's going to change the price of it, but it's also going to change how much you're getting. So if you're doing something where you're following a pattern, you're going to just want to make sure you have enough. The next size up would be a fat eighth bundle. This is from Moda. This one is called Little Miss Sunshine. It's one of my favorite ones. But again, you get one fat eighth of each of the line, and a fat eighth is basically a half of a fat quarter. So a fat quarter is 18 by 22. Usually this one is 9 by 22. So you're still getting the length, you're just not quite getting the width. These are great for, you can really get a whole quilt out of one of these and still have some left over. You just want to make sure that your pattern isn't calling for a cut that's 9 inches, over 9 inches. So you won't get that out of this. So just be careful when you're buying these that they match your pattern. The next size up is going to be your fat quarter bundle, and these, again, like I mentioned, are 18 inches by 22 inches. You get one fat quarter for each piece in the line, which is a nice variety. This is certainly enough for a quilt. I like to get these because it gives me more options with my pattern, and I always have almost half of it left over. It really kind of depends on the quilt, but you can usually get a couple of quilts out of these. So these are a really good option, and depending on the fabric line, again, these can run anywhere from maybe 80 to 100, maybe sometimes even over $100. And the fat eighth bundles, sorry, I keep forgetting to tell you price, but these are closer to 50, so it's just half what the fat quarter bundle is. All right, and then the last thing that you can purchase, obviously, is yardage. Now this, if you've followed my Instagram feed at all, you know that I use white in almost all of my quilts, and so I do actually buy this by the bolt. I just got this one from one of my favorite stores, Etsy stores, Stitches and Giggles, and I'll link her below, but this is the Moda Bella White, and it's 9900-97, and this is a nice white fabric, but it's just slightly softer, so it's not like a harsh bright white, it's just kind of a nice soft white, and I really like this. It goes with all of my stuff. If you find that you're using a lot of a specific color for your backgrounds, then it's sometimes cheaper to go out and buy a bolt. However, you can also purchase whatever you need in bolt format from your local craft store as well. So there's that. And then also the last thing you'll need is some batting. Now batting isn't super exciting, but since I use all cotton materials and all cotton threads, I also suggest using a 100% cotton batting. Keep in mind that if you use something like wool batting or polyester batting, it's not going to shrink at the same rate as your fabrics if you're using cotton, and so you could get some bunching and that kind of thing. Now batting comes in different lofts, and that just means the thickness. I tend to use this one, I actually buy this in the by the bolt as well because I go through it so much. This is just the natural white cotton batting, 100% cotton batting, and it's not very thick, but I find that when I've got my background plus the batting plus my top, it's perfectly fine. The quilts are nice and thick and warm, and I don't like doing something that's super high loft batting where it's going to be really puffy, and it kind of makes it a little bit more difficult to quilt that way too. But you can use whatever you like. If you want something that's warmer, you're going to want to get a little bit heavier weight cotton batting. This is just their kind of standard lightweight batting, so just use whatever works best for you. But I do suggest that you keep your fabrics and your threads and your batting consistent amongst the material that you're using. Alright, so that's pretty much it to get started quilting. You need just basically your mat, your trimmer, some rulers, some scissors, your machine, thread, and fabric, and you're good to go. Alright guys, I have one more fun thing for you. Fat Quarter Shop is sponsoring my How to Get Started Quilting videos, and so what that means is that I have fun prizes to give away that we'll be doing at the end of each of our videos. So the first prize are the little house pins, which I mentioned earlier in this video. They're my favorite pins, and Fat Quarter Shop is going to give away a set of these in the cute little magnetic tin for one of you guys. So just head over to my blog post. I will link it below, and you'll enter the raffle copter on that blog post, and then a random winner will be selected from that. So I hope this video helped you getting started with your supplies. In my next video, we're going to talk about certain features to look for in quilting sewing machines, because I know that can be really hard and overwhelming knowing which machine to pick. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you for the next one. As always, if you have any questions, you're welcome to email me, and I'll do my best to help answer. You can also comment on this video, and I'll do what I can to get back to you guys as soon as possible. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.